The monitoring array of the Galactic collective represented the pinnacle of computational engineering. Quantum crystals interconnected in a web of unimaginable complexity, processing information at speeds that would render human supercomputers obsolete in microseconds. Each sensor was a marvel of technological precision, designed to capture the subtlest vibrations of cosmic communication. Sinrak had dedicated 3 centuries to studying emerging civilizations. Their species prided itself on objective observation, on the ability to categorize and understand every form of intelligent life through pure mathematical analysis. But humans defied every established model of cognitive development. The comedy routine that first caught Sinrak's attention was a recording from a small terrestrial venue. The performer, a human named Dave Chappelle, stood on a slightly elevated platform, holding a microphone. What followed was nothing short of a cognitive explosion. The linguistic algorithms first interpreted the transmission as pure chaos. Sound waves modulated with emotional intensity, punctuated by rhythmic outbursts that triggered unexpected neural responses. Words became weapons of social commentary, jokes transformed into complex philosophical arguments, and humor revealed layers of human psychology that no previous analysis had ever captured. Sinrak watched, fascinated, as the human comedian dismantled complex social constructs through nothing more than carefully crafted words and timing. Each joke was a precision instrument, simultaneously entertaining and deeply analytical. The audience's response was equally complex, waves of laughter that weren't just auditory reactions, but collective emotional experiences. The Galactic had extensive databases of communication protocols. They understood humor as a mathematical construct, a predictable pattern of tension and release of subverted expectations. But this was different. This was art, philosophy, and social critique condensed into a few carefully chosen words. One particular moment stood out. The comedian began a story that seemed to be about a personal experience, then gradually revealed it as a nuanced commentary on societal structures, power dynamics, and human perception. The linguistic complexity was staggering. He used language not just to communicate, but to reshape understanding itself. Sinrak's neural interface began to overheat. The standard classification protocols simply couldn't process what they were witnessing. This wasn't just communication. It was a form of intellectual shape-shifting. The comedian was simultaneously creating and destroying meaning, playing with the very fabric of linguistic and social understanding. The database searches revealed more. This wasn't an isolated incident. Humans had entire disciplines dedicated to this type of complex communication. Stand-up comedy, they discovered, was just one manifestation of a broader human capacity for adaptive, creative communication. Previous observations had suggested humans were a developing species with potential. Now, Sinrak realized they were witnessing something far more profound. Humans didn't just communicate, they reimagined communication with each interaction. The comedy routine became the first entry in what would become the most comprehensive study of human intelligence ever attempted. Sinrak labeled the initial report Cognitive Fluidity. Preliminary observations on human communicative plasticity. What began as a random intercepted transmission would become the first piece of evidence that humans represented a fundamentally different approach to intelligence. They didn't just process information, they played with it, transformed it, found meaning in the spaces between words, in the pauses, in the unexpected connections. The Galactic collective would never be the same, and they hadn't even begun to understand the full extent of human potential. Deep within the crystalline archives of the Galactic research complex, an ancient computational challenge had haunted their scientific community for millennia. The quantum paradox of interspatial resonance was more than just a mathematical problem. It was a cosmic puzzle that had consumed entire generations of their most brilliant minds. The problem itself was deceptively simple in its initial presentation. A series of mathematical equations that describe the potential interactions between multiple dimensions, complicated by quantum uncertainties that seemed to defy all known physical laws. Previous attempts to solve the problem had resulted in computational breakdowns, neural interface failures, and more than a few promising researchers driven to the brink of cognitive exhaustion. When the encrypted problem was accidentally transmitted to a human research facility, no one expected anything remarkable. The Varlectus monitoring systems prepared to document yet another futile attempt by a developing species to comprehend complex theoretical physics. Dr. Maya Chen received the transmission during a particularly chaotic morning. Her laboratory at the International Quantum Research Center looked more like an artist's studio than a scientific facility. Whiteboards covered in colorful diagrams competed for space with musical instruments, children's drawings, and what appeared to be a collection of unusual toys. Instead of immediately diving into traditional computational analysis, Chen did something unprecedented. She called a meeting that would have been considered ludicrous by any standard scientific protocol. The team she assembled seemed more like a bizarre social experiment than a serious research group. There was Marcus Rodriguez, a jazz improvisation musician with a background in theoretical mathematics. Alongside him sat Alina Kimura, a children's book illustrator known for her complex visual metaphors. The third member was an unexpected addition. Jack Harper, a retired street performer who specialized in optical illusions and cognitive magic tricks. "We're going to approach this differently," Chen announced, spreading the quantum paradox equations across a large table. Instead of rows of computers and precise mathematical instruments, they used colored markers, large sheets of paper, and an almost playful approach to the problem. Marcus began by translating the mathematical equations into a series of musical improvisations. His fingers danced across a synthesizer, creating sound patterns that seemed to mirror the complex dimensional interactions described in the equations. Alina started drawing, her illustrations transforming the abstract mathematical concepts into a series of interconnected visual metaphors that defied traditional scientific visualization. Jack approached the problem from an entirely different angle. He began creating physical models using everyday objects, paper clips, rubber bands, origami constructions that represented the quantum interactions in a tactile, three-dimensional space. The Varlectus monitoring systems were bewildered. Their predictive algorithms showed a 0% chance of success. This wasn't how serious scientific research was conducted. There were no precise calculations, no methodical step-by-step approach. It looked more like a creative workshop than a scientific investigation. 72 hours into the project, something extraordinary happened. The team's unconventional approach began to reveal layers of the problem that had remained hidden to countless previous researchers. Their combined creativity, the musical interpretations, the visual metaphors, the physical modeling, started to unlock the quantum paradox in ways no one could have predicted. It wasn't a breakthrough of pure logic, it was a breakthrough of imagination. The solution they developed wasn't just a mathematical resolution. It was a complete reimagining of how dimensional interactions could be understood. The Varlectus research team watching the transmission could hardly believe their sensory inputs. This wasn't just solving a problem. This was creating an entirely new way of perceiving scientific challenges. When Dr. Chen submitted their findings, she included a note that would become legendary. Sometimes, to solve the impossible, you need to stop thinking like a scientist and start thinking like an artist. The solar storm arrived with little warning, a cosmic tempest that threatened to obliterate communication networks across multiple galactic civilizations. Most advanced species had elaborate protection protocols, intricate systems developed over centuries, designed to withstand such celestial disruptions. The Varlectus had a response plan that spanned 17,000 pages of technical documentation. Their standard procedure involved activating a multi-layered shield system that would take approximately 273 standard hours to fully deploy. By the time their safeguards would be operational, most communication networks would be reduced to cosmic dust. In contrast, a group of human teenagers responded with something completely unexpected. The initial team gathered in Zara Ahmed's garage in suburban Chicago. What looked like a chaotic space filled with discarded electronics, musical instruments, and an alarming number of energy drink cans was actually becoming the nerve center of a global problem-solving initiative. Zara, a 17-year-old high school student with an unconventional approach to technology, had first noticed the incoming solar storm through an amateur radio network. Instead of following official protocols, she sent out a global message through social media, online gaming platforms, and community forums. "We need a crazy solution." Her initial post read, "Anyone with wild ideas, join this server." Within hours, a global team assembled. There were game designers from Japan, meme creators from Brazil, cryptocurrency engineers from Nigeria, environmental scientists from Australia, and street performers from France. They shared nothing in common except an ability to think beyond conventional boundaries. The team's first breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Lu Wei, a Chinese street magician, suggested using principles of optical illusion to bend communication signals around the solar interference. What seemed like a ridiculous idea became the foundation of their approach. A professional esports player contributed algorithms typically used to predict player movements in complex video games. These were reimagined as communication routing techniques that could dynamically adapt to changing interference patterns. A group of marine biologists shared research about how certain deep-sea creatures communicate through extreme environmental challenges. Their studies on signal propagation through challenging mediums became a critical component of the emerging solution. Blockchain developers created a distributed communication protocol that could fragment and reassemble information in ways that made traditional communication networks look primitive. Each message became a living, adaptive entity capable of finding its way through cosmic chaos. The most surprising contribution came from a group of elementary school children in Kenya. Their project about how ants communicate through complex chemical signals inspired a revolutionary approach to information routing that completely transformed the team's understanding of communication resilience. 48 hours into the challenge, they had developed a communication protocol that was nothing short of miraculous. It wasn't a single solution, but an adaptive network that could reconfigure itself in real time, learning and changing faster than any existing system. The Varlectus monitoring systems watched in absolute bewilderment. This wasn't just a technical solution. It was a living, breathing communication ecosystem. The humans hadn't just protected their networks, they had essentially created a new form of information transmission. When the solar storm hit, most civilizations braced for complete communication breakdown. The human network not only survived, but actually became stronger, with communication pathways expanding and improving during the cosmic event. Zinrak, reviewing the data, realized they were witnessing something profound. Humans didn't just solve problems. They transformed challenges into opportunities for innovation. Their intelligence wasn't about having the most advanced technology, but about the ability to reimagine possibility itself. The report filed would become a turning point in how the Varlectus understood intelligence. Titled Adaptive Cognition, Humanity's Quantum Leap, it suggested that true intelligence wasn't about predetermined solutions, but about continuous creative adaptation. The Krillak civilization represented the pinnacle of logical existence. Silicon-based entities that evolved beyond traditional biological constraints, they viewed emotions as a fundamental weakness. Their entire society functioned on pure computational logic, with every interaction carefully measured and mathematically predicted. First contact with other species typically followed a rigidly defined protocol. The Krillaks would analyze potential diplomatic interactions through millions of probabilistic scenarios, reducing communication to a series of strategic calculations. Every previous encounter had ended in misunderstanding, with most negotiations collapsing under the weight of emotional complexity. Ambassador Elena Rodriguez approached the diplomatic mission differently. Where previous human diplomatic teams had brought complex treaties and technological demonstrations, she assembled something entirely unexpected. Her diplomatic kit contained no traditional negotiation materials. Instead, she carried a collection of art supplies, musical instruments, and a carefully curated selection of books, photographs, and personal stories. Her team included a children's book illustrator, a retired therapist, and a jazz musician, hardly the typical diplomatic course. The initial meeting took place on a neutral space station, a sterile environment designed to minimize emotional variables. The Krillak's diplomatic team, composed of geometric crystal structures that pulsed with computational energy, expected a standard exchange of strategic information. Alina began by sharing a story. Not a political narrative or a strategic overview, but a deeply personal account of her grandmother's immigration journey. She spoke of hope, struggle, resilience, and the complex emotions that drove human migration. The translation algorithms struggled to capture the nuanced emotional landscape of her narrative. The Krillak's communication interfaces initially interpreted her story as meaningless noise. Their systems were designed to process pure information, not the subtle interplay of personal experience and collective memory. But something unexpected began to happen. As Alina spoke, she began to draw. Her illustrations transformed her grandmother's story into a visual narrative that transcended linguistic barriers. Each stroke of color, each carefully chosen image, communicated layers of meaning that pure language could never capture. The therapist and her team began to play a soft melody on a traditional instrument. The music seemed to breathe life into the story, adding emotional depth that challenged the Krillak's understanding of communication. Something remarkable happened. The computational structures of the Krillak's diplomatic team began to resonate with the human presentation. Their crystalline forms started to shift almost imperceptibly, responding to the emotional complexity of the narrative in ways they couldn't comprehend. The jazz musician introduced an element of improvisation, demonstrating how humans could create meaning through spontaneous collaboration. The Krillak's witnessed a form of communication that was simultaneously structured and completely unpredictable. By the mission's conclusion, the Krillak's had experienced something unprecedented. They had not just received information, they had been invited to understand a different way of perceiving existence. Emotion was no longer a weakness to be eliminated, but a complex form of intelligence they had never imagined. The diplomatic report filed by the Krillak's representative contained a phrase that would become legendary. Humans do not communicate. They create living bridges of understanding. Zinrak, reviewing the mission logs, realized humans had done something extraordinary. They had transformed diplomacy from a strategic interaction into an act of profound connection. Emotional intelligence wasn't just a skill. It was a sophisticated form of communication that could bridge seemingly impossible divides. The mission became a turning point in galactic diplomatic understanding. Humanity had shown that the most powerful form of communication transcends words, logic, and traditional understanding. It was about the ability to truly see and feel the experience of another. The Varlectus research facility stretched across multiple quantum dimensions, a testament to their understanding of intelligence as a pure, calculable phenomenon. Their archives contained exhaustive studies of thousands of species, each meticulously categorized and analyzed. Intelligence, they believed, was a measurable, predictable construct, a series of computational pathways that could be mapped, understood, and ultimately controlled. Then came the human research samples. Dr. Arya Nakamura's study began as a routine cross-species cognitive analysis. What she discovered would fundamentally challenge everything the Varlectus understood about intelligence, learning, and human potential. The first anomaly appeared in the educational records, where most advanced species developed specialized knowledge tracks. Humans demonstrated something entirely different. A marine biologist would suddenly become a quantum physicist. A street performer would develop groundbreaking mathematical theories. A children's book illustrator would contribute critical insights to complex engineering challenges. Humans didn't just learn. They transformed. The research team tracked several case studies that defied all established cognitive models. There was Dr. Marcus Chen, who had transitioned from classical music composition to breakthrough neuroscience research. His journey wasn't a simple career change, but a complete cognitive reimagining. The neural pathways showed something unprecedented: the ability to not just acquire new knowledge, but to fundamentally restructure cognitive processing. Another subject, Sofia Rodriguez, presented an even more remarkable case. A high school art teacher, she had developed a revolutionary approach to urban planning by applying principles of visual composition to city infrastructure. Her work didn't just bridge disciplines, it created entirely new fields of study. The Varlectus cognitive mapping systems began to malfunction. Traditional intelligence metrics, processing speed, information retention, logical reasoning, became meaningless when applied to human learning patterns. Humans didn't just accumulate knowledge, they created entirely new ways of understanding. What the Varlectus discovered was a form of intelligence that was fluid, adaptive, and fundamentally creative. Learning for humans wasn't a linear process, but a dynamic, interconnected experience. They didn't just absorb information, they transformed it, reimagined it, found connections that no computational system could predict. The most shocking revelation came from their study of human creativity. Where most species approached problem-solving through established methodological approaches, humans generated solutions that seemed to emerge from pure imagination. A problem in quantum physics might be solved through an insight inspired by a children's fairy tale. A complex medical challenge could find its resolution in a street performer's understanding of human movement. Dr. Nakamura's final report contained a phrase that would become legendary in xenocognitive studies. Human intelligence is not a destination. It is a continuous journey of reinvention. The implications were staggering. Intelligence was no longer a fixed attribute, but a dynamic, ever-changing process of exploration and transformation. Humans didn't just learn. They continuously reimagined what learning could be. The Varlectus research team began to understand that they were witnessing something unprecedented. Humans represented a radical new model of intelligence, one that defied categorization, challenged established understanding, and suggested that true cognitive potential lay not in perfection, but in the ability to constantly adapt, create, and reimagine. Xenrak, reviewing the research, realized they were looking at more than just a species. They were observing a fundamental reimagining of what intelligence could mean. Humans weren't just another entry in their vast cognitive archives. They were a living demonstration that intelligence was far more complex, far more beautiful, and far more mysterious than anyone had ever imagined. The cognitive revolution had begun, and humanity was leading the way. The cosmic phenomenon approached with a silence more terrifying than any sound. Galactic early warning systems lit up with impossible readings, a convergence of quantum anomalies that threatened to unravel the fundamental fabric of multiple star systems. Every advanced civilization had protocols for such events. The Zornak Collective had a mathematically precise evacuation strategy. The Quantum Harmonics League prepared intricate dimensional shielding technologies. The Silicon Consensus had computational models that predicted potential outcomes with near-absolute certainty. Humans did something entirely different. The response began on a platform most advanced civilizations would have dismissed as irrelevant: social media. A simple hashtag Cosmic Challenge, spread across global communication networks faster than any official alert system could process. Within hours, a global collaborative effort emerged. It wasn't a military response or a government-led initiative. It was a spontaneous, worldwide brainstorming session that defied every known approach to crisis management. Children's drawings became mathematical models. A street performer in Rio de Janeiro developed a theory about dimensional resonance based on the rhythm of his dance movements. A group of elementary school students in Kenya created a communication protocol inspired by how termite colonies respond to environmental threats. Gamers contributed algorithmic models developed from complex strategy games. Artists generated visual representations that revealed unexpected patterns in the cosmic anomaly. Musicians created sound wave patterns that seemed to interact with the quantum disturbance in ways no scientific model could predict. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, coordinating from a makeshift research center, watched in awe as the collaborative effort took shape. This wasn't a traditional scientific response. It was a living, breathing ecosystem of problem-solving that transcended disciplinary boundaries. The most remarkable contributions came from unexpected sources. A group of retired textile workers developed a theory about quantum entanglement based on their understanding of complex weaving patterns. A community of urban gardeners provided insights into adaptive systems that became critical to understanding the cosmic phenomenon. What emerged was not a single solution, but an adaptive, living approach to the cosmic threat. Each contribution was like a piece of a complex puzzle, with humans around the world simultaneously competing and collaborating. The Varlectus monitoring systems struggled to comprehend what they were witnessing. This wasn't a coordinated response in any traditional sense. It was a form of collective intelligence that emerged spontaneously, without central direction, driven by pure human creativity and collaborative spirit. As the cosmic phenomenon drew closer, the human response continued to evolve. Each new insight sparked additional creativity. The solution wasn't about stopping the threat. It was about understanding it, adapting to it, finding a way to coexist with the fundamental changes it represented. Zinrak, reviewing the data, realized they were witnessing something unprecedented. Humans didn't approach challenges as a problem to be solved, but as an opportunity for transformation. Their intelligence was a living, breathing ecosystem of creativity, adaptation, and collective imagination. The final solution defied all scientific understanding. It wasn't a technological shield or a mathematical model. It was a complex, adaptive response that transformed the very nature of the cosmic threat. Where other civilizations would have sought to destroy or avoid, humans found a way to understand, interact with, and ultimately coexist with the fundamental changes. As the cosmic phenomenon passed, something extraordinary happened. The collaborative effort didn't end. The global network of problem solvers continued to explore, to create, to imagine. What had begun as a crisis response became a fundamental reimagining of how intelligence could work. The Varlectus record would later note, humans do not solve problems. They transform them. The recognition of human potential spread across the galactic community like a quantum wave of understanding. What had once been dismissed as a young, chaotic species became the most sought-after intellectual resource in known space. Scientific institutions from 100 different civilizations began sending their most promising researchers to study humanity. They didn't come with traditional academic intentions. These were pilgrimages of intellectual discovery, attempts to understand a form of intelligence that defied every established model of cognitive development. The first wave of alien researchers arrived with carefully constructed observation protocols. They expected to find a systematic approach to human creativity, a method that could be cataloged and understood. Instead, they discovered something far more profound. Dr. Lisara of the Quantum Resonance Academy found herself embedded in a small community center in Mumbai. What looked like a simple after-school program was actually a crucible of cognitive innovation. Children from diverse backgrounds were solving complex problems through methods that seemed to blend play, art, and pure intellectual exploration. One afternoon, she watched a group of students tackle an engineering challenge. They didn't approach it with traditional design methods. Instead, they created elaborate narratives, drew complex illustrations, and used dance movements to understand structural dynamics. The solution they developed was so elegant, so unexpectedly brilliant, that Lizara's research documentation completely broke down. Other researchers had similar experiences. A team from the Galactic Linguistic Consortium discovered that human communication was less about information transfer and more about creating shared understanding. Languages weren't just systems of communication. They were living, breathing ecosystems of cultural and emotional exchange. The most remarkable discoveries came from unexpected interactions. A group of retired musicians developed a breakthrough in quantum computing by applying principles of musical improvisation. Urban gardeners contributed fundamental insights into complex adaptive systems. Street performers revealed new understanding of human movement that transformed medical research. Universities around the world became pilgrimage sites for alien researchers. But these weren't traditional academic environments. Learning happened everywhere, in community centers, on street corners, through online collaborative platforms that spanned global networks. The Varlectus Collective compiled a comprehensive report that would become legendary, titled The Human Cognitive Paradigm. It suggested that intelligence was not a fixed attribute, but a dynamic, creative process of continuous transformation. Alien civilizations began to restructure their own educational and research systems. They realized that true innovation came not from perfecting existing knowledge, but from the ability to constantly reimagine understanding itself. Some of the most advanced species started implementing human-inspired learning approaches. Rigid educational tracks were replaced with interdisciplinary exploration. Specialized research became more fluid, with scientists encouraged to draw insights from art, music, and everyday human experiences. The most profound impact came unexpectedly. Civilizations that had been trapped in technological and social stagnation began to find new paths of development. By embracing the human approach of continuous creativity and adaptive thinking, they discovered solutions to challenges that had seemed insurmountable. Zinrak, reviewing the comprehensive reports, realized that humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy was not a specific technology or scientific breakthrough. It was a fundamental reimagining of what intelligence could mean. Humans had shown that true cognitive potential lay not in perfection, but in the ability to continuously adapt, create, and see the world not as it is, but as it could be. The final notation in the report captured the essence of this discovery. Humanity is not a species to be studied. They are a living demonstration of the infinite potential of intelligence itself. As alien civilizations continued to learn from humans, one thing became clear. The galaxy would never be the same again. The transmission arrived without warning, a quantum burst of communication that simultaneously reached every known civilization in the galaxy. Its origin was unmistakable, a small blue planet that most advanced species had previously dismissed as unremarkable. Zinrak received the message in the central archives of the Varlectus Collective, a vast computational complex that had cataloged millions of species over countless generations. The message was deceptively simple, yet it would reshape understanding across multiple dimensions of existence. The human told intelligence beyond our understanding. It wasn't a boast. It wasn't a declaration of superiority. It was a profound acknowledgement of the most fundamental truth that humanity had revealed to the galaxy. The message came from a collaborative effort that spanned the entire human species. Artists, scientists, philosophers, children, elders, every segment of human society had contributed to its creation. It wasn't a single narrative, but a living, breathing testament to human cognitive potential. Embedded within the transmission were layers of meaning that would take generations to fully comprehend. Mathematical equations danced alongside musical compositions. Scientific diagrams intertwined with personal stories. Complex philosophical concepts were illustrated through children's drawings and street performances. Each alien civilization received a version of the message tailored to their unique perceptual capabilities. The quantum resonance networks sought intricate mathematical patterns. The empathic consensus experienced a profound emotional landscape. The silicon-based intelligences discovered computational models of unprecedented complexity. What made the transmission extraordinary was its fundamental nature. It wasn't just communication, it was an invitation. An invitation to see intelligence not as a fixed attribute, but as a continuous journey of discovery and transformation. The Varlectus researchers worked tirelessly to decode the deeper meanings. They discovered that the message was not a single communication, but a living network of understanding. Each time it was analyzed, new layers of meaning emerged. It was a communication that grew, changed, and evolved with each interaction. Civilizations that had been isolated for millennia found themselves drawn into a new way of understanding. The human message suggested that true intelligence was not about having the most advanced technology or the most precise calculations. It was about the capacity to imagine, to connect, to see the universe not as it is, but as it could be. Some of the most advanced species began to realize how limited their own understanding had been. Intelligence was not a destination, but a continuous journey of exploration and reimagination. The transmission contained no demands, no assertions of superiority. It was simply a celebration of possibility. Embedded within the message were countless stories. A street performer in Rio de Janeiro, explaining quantum mechanics through dance. A group of children in Kenya solving an engineering challenge through storytelling. An elderly artist in Tokyo revealing complex mathematical principles through a painting. Zinrak realized they were witnessing something unprecedented. Humanity was not just sharing knowledge. They were demonstrating a fundamental approach to existence itself. The final layer of the transmission was the most profound. It was an open invitation, not to join, not to follow, but to explore, to recognize that every species, every individual, held the potential for this type of transformative intelligence. Intelligence is not what you know, the message suggested. It is how you imagine. It is how you connect. It is how you see the possibility in everything. As the transmission completed its galactic journey, something extraordinary happened. Civilizations that had been static for millennia began to change. They started to look at their own potential differently. They began to explore, to imagine, to see beyond their established understanding. The universe would never be the same again.